In a case of history repeating itself, another series devised by KJ Inafune that had a planned conclusion was brought back for another cash-in by Capcom before work on a sequel series could start. Thankfully though, the result, Mega Man 04, was pretty awesome, as opposed to the abject failures that were Mega Man X6 and 7. But now, Inticreates would create a successor to a successor, and the start of the 6th series of Mega Man titles. Released in 2006 after a year of development, just like every previous title in the series they had worked on, was Mega Man ZX for the Nintendo DS. Now, as a direct sequel, just like the Zero series, Mega Man ZX picks up a few hundred years or so post Mega Man 04. Unlike the Zero series, however, ZX is much more based off the consequences of the prior games. So, spoilers abound, let's take a look at the plot. For the first time in Mega Man history, you get a choice of a male or female protagonist, and this affects both the story and gameplay in various ways. For performance, the only worthwhile difference is that Ale crawls faster while Vent takes less knockback, but the plot takes a much more radical divergence. All of the main plot points still happen the same way for each character, but they spell out a different story for each protagonist. Vent's story is based in the past, and goes to explain how the events of the Mega Man Zero series lead into Mega Man ZX, with only a minimal amount of foreshadowing of what is to come later. Ale, however, has the opposite story structure, which builds up plot points for the sequel, Mega Man ZX Advent, while only taking the barest time to explain how everything came to be. It's an interesting way of making the run-through of each character both rewarding and worth playing to completion. Anyway, on to the actual plot. For efficiency purposes, I will treat both stories as one large one and construct the entire narrative using both as a reference. Regardless of the player you pick, you work for Jiro, or Jiroette, as a transporter, making a delivery of something called biometal to a client named Prairie when your caravan is attacked and you are separated. Mavericks close in on your position, but the biometal you are carrying reveals itself to have a conscience named Model X, and by mega-merging with it, you gain the powers of the biometal and defeat the Mavericks. Prairie reveals herself to be the leader of the Guardians, a sect of public service defenders that protect the country from Maverick attacks, and after reuniting with Jiro, who is now in possession and use of Model Z, you officially join the Guardians, and just in time for a major Maverick attack to break out near Inner Peace, the city you were living in at the time. You rush out to stop them with Jiro in tow, but later find him taken out by two Mavericks, Pandora and Prometheus, who are led by Serpent, the leader of Serpent Inc., which runs the city and its defense force as a villain with good public relations, by intentionally releasing Mavericks and then stopping them with his own forces. Serpent uses the power of his own biometal, Model W, to take control of Jiro and force you to fight him, during which Model X is broken and Jiro mortally wounded, with Mavericks closing in on the both of you. With his last breath, Jiro bequeaths Model Z to you, and by combining the two biometals you are able to mega-merge again, but Serpent gets away before you can stop him. With new players on the board, you set off with Prairie's help to recover the other 4 lost biometal that were stolen by Serpent, and recover a password that will let you access the resting place of the main body of Model W before Serpent can get to it, since at the time all he possesses is a fragment of the core body. Using the stolen biometal, Serpent has created 8 pseudoroids that draw from the consciousness might, and by defeating them, you acquire the use of models H, F, L, and P by combining them with X, since each person can only share a link with one biometal. By the way, if those biometal forms and names sound familiar, it's because they are direct lifts of X and Zero, along with the 4 guardians of Neo Arcadia, Harpuia, Fafnir, Leviathan, and Phantom. Apparently, after the destruction of Ragnarok at the end of Mega Man 04, an intact piece that still housed the consciousness of Dr. Vile fell to Earth where it was discovered by the first leader of the Guardians, who is all but stated to be CL. This also indirectly makes Dr. Vile not just the bigger bad of Mega Man 1 and 2, but also ZX and its sequel. CL names the fragment Model W and begins to study it, and realizing its danger, she uses her research to create biometal based off the previous heroes of the Mega Man series as stated. But, unfortunately, Model W is a corrupting influence to all around it, and a member of the Guardians was tempted enough to steal the Model W fragment and murder the entire Guardian team, including CL, who were sent to isolate the main body of Model W using the password-protected barrier. And this Guardian betrayer would later be known as Serpent. With the death of CL, the new Guardian leader would be her younger sister Prairie, who again is all but stated to be Alouette from the Zero series. Her existence, however, is something of an anomaly, as Reploid and human relations have changed drastically since the events of the Zero games, with humans essentially being turned into cyborgs and Reploids gifted with lifespans in order for both to better coexist with the other, with only two pure Reploids from the older times being Prairie, and maybe the Guardian researcher Fluve, who might be Paraquat, returning from the Zero series. The result of these changes is the outright obsolescence of the Reploid term, as both human and machine are regarded the same by all, and apparently both are capable of becoming cyber elves, as Vent and Ail's mother is stated to have become one, even though she and they are both technically human. More story details reveal that Model W actually had its own creator who assembled the fragment and infused the body of every potential Mega Man with his DNA, including you, Jiro, and Serpent, which allows you to Mega Merge. Encounters with Prometheus and Pandora make mention to this creator having a game of destiny where all the Mega Man are pitted against each other to see who will come out on top, inherit Model W, and rule the world, with the two of them being tasked with spurring the Mega Man to fight one another, which later becomes the primary plot of Mega Man ZX Advent. You eventually reassemble the password, but Serpent is able to retrieve Model W anyway, so you set off to Slither Inc.'s headquarters in order to stop him. There, it is revealed that Serpent uses the Maverick attacks he sets out to create cyber elves which he could use to fully awaken Model W. And in a bout of anger over this reveal, and the realization that your mother was one of these victims used to fuel Model W, your rage ends up being the catalyst that switches the fragment on. The biometal in your possession reassure you that your cause is still righteous, and you best the Model W fused Serpent. Afterwards, you have a quick chat with Jiro, who is now a cyber elf himself, and you make the proclamation to use the biometal powers to protect the world and its inhabitants, ending Mega Man ZX. Overall, the story is kind of there. Even with the pretty grim events that occur, it's nowhere near as dark as the stuff depicted or spoken about in the Zero series. And on that note, the entire game is much lighter and softer in tone compared to the previous series. It isn't as engaging as say 0, 3, or 4, but it gets the job done, and in hindsight, it's mostly setting up for the sequel ZX Advent, which really picks everything up and starts running. But as for the gameplay, that's where things get much more interesting. In general, the game plays exactly like the Zero series in mechanics and engine, and the only real fundamental change is in the design, and that comes from biometal. Each biometal you acquire is basically a different character to play as with their own techniques and abilities. Model ZX has the classic Saber and Buster Shot, HX can glide and air dash, LX can freely move in water, FX shoots powerful Buster Shots, and PX rains utter death on anything in front of it with piles of kunai. In addition to all these features are secondary attributes of the biometal. HX, FX, and LX can use thunder, fire, and ice attacks respectively, and utilize weaknesses just like in the Zero series through charged attacks or the overdrive system. By activating overdrive, all your attacks gain an elemental status, or the shadow dash ability with PX since it is non-elemental, along with a power buff to every attack. This drains biometal energy very quickly and is cancelled should you be hit by anything, but overdrive can rip bosses apart in mere seconds if you use it right, and its sheer brokenness doesn't make me question why it was removed for the sequel. The 4 Guardian biometals also have abilities that make use of the bottom touchscreen. HX identifies boss weak areas and displays the life of each enemy. FX can customize the trajectory of its shots, leading to some deliciously cheesy boss KOs. LX gets a radar that shows items on a small minimap, and PX reveals hidden areas and allows you to see better in dark areas. By the way, on the boss weak area note, in addition to bosses with elements having specific elemental weaknesses just like the Zero series, each of the 8 pseudoroids also has a specific area on their body that if attacked deals extra damage, which if you combine with say overdrive, well, just look. But this comes with one of my biggest gripes involving ZX. You aren't supposed to hit the weak areas, because doing so damages the biometal you are trying to recover, and as a result leaves it with a lower energy bar depending on how much you attack the weak area, identified by getting a level 4 to 1 victory. And to get a perfect condition form of level 4, you cannot hit a boss's weak area once. Some, like High Volt and Purple, have easy methods of avoiding accidentally hitting their weak area, but some, like Flammel, are nearly impossible to avoid and require some pretty out-of-the-box thinking to get a level 4 victory on. You can ignore this and attack a boss's weak area all you want since you can spend E-crystals to repair a biometal manually, but the principle of introducing a new mechanic of strategic boss weaknesses and then making it so you don't want to use it was always frustrating to me. But thankfully, like many issues I have with this game, it was fixed in Advent. And in addition, throughout the game bosses will reappear, and if you fight them and obtain a higher level victory than you previously had, then the biometal you have is instantly repaired and you don't have to spend E-crystals on it. ZX, because of Inticreates cementing its status as a grade A developer, or perhaps because of the power of the Nintendo DS, also contains some higher evident production values. Vent and Ale are more or less voiced in Japanese during normal gameplay, and throughout the story you get a few high production anime sections to highlight specific plot points. These are nice, but I'm not really a fan of either Vent or Ale's voice, particularly in gameplay. Maybe because Zero was more or less completely silent in his series, but all the grunts and shouts when jumping, slashing, and shooting can get irritating very quickly, and I honestly wish there was an option to turn it off. But the other sound aspect, the music, is pretty damn awesome, and it's some of Yamada's finest work. However, one design aspect that irks me about Mega Man ZX is how underwhelming it can feel. The thing is, while having essentially 5 playable characters is cool and leads to lots of interesting things you can do, each biometal form has comparatively little things it can do as a result. Being able to essentially play as Zero, Harpooia, Fafnir, Leviathan, and Phantom should feel more substantial given what you see them do in the Zero games. But then you get them and you find that it isn't much really. It's because of game balance definitely, but the issue is still that Model ZX can only shoot and slash, HX can only glide and slash, LX can only swim and slash, and PX can only fire kunai, shuriken, and hang from ledges. Compare that to the crazy things their inspirations could do, or the massive amount of weapons, skills, and extra features available to Zero, and suddenly, even with the variety ZX has, it suddenly feels very small and cramped. Even the Cyber Elf system was completely scrapped in favor of finding life-ups and a small amount of upgrade chips throughout the game. My intake here is that more is not always better, and I ended up preferring the customization options you had in the previous series. I mean, to tickle the double jump again, and perhaps to push my buttons specifically, Serpent himself frequently uses double jumps during your initial fight with him. Ugh. Now that definitely sounds really petty and unfair, and it is, but it's a feeling I can't shake when playing ZX, and I had to, well, vent it here. All of that, however, does nothing to take away from the actual gameplay, which is still pretty solid barring a few enraging examples. But there really isn't much to say since it plays exactly like the Zero games. The stage design is radically different, and not just in a visually enhanced sense. Akin to Zero 1, ZX plays like a Metroidvania game, with interconnecting transervers and a huge map instead of a central hub to start levels from. This has the effect of making the game feel much bigger, but unfortunately your map is basically useless since it is just a grid with absolutely no topography, leading to mass confusion as you need to travel manually to each mission location, and their given location, if they even tell you, are often abstract and without, well, direction. The result is that using a fan-made map or guide can feel like practically a necessity for first-time runs, and this is something which Advent also recognized and fixed. The areas themselves can also be maze-like in design, with multiple branching paths leading to hidden goodies, the returning secret discs, or just an alternate path. But sometimes that change in design is used for a downright evil purpose. I'm talking about obtaining the Area K sub-tank. You want to know how to get it? Well, here's how. First, you proceed normally through the stage, but past the mini-boss you go up this shaft and have to evade rising insta-kill lava to reach this terminal so you can slow the lava and remove a pool blocking an optional path. You then need to go back through to the mini-boss area, but go right normally until this area with blocks you can break with FX's Megaton punches, but do it really quickly, cause even there is also insta-kill lava coming after you that even when slowed can catch up in the moment. You then go through this optional path you'd revealed and use PX to discover a hidden room that leads to a switch that opens a door in K1, where, good golly gee, I hope you figure it out yourself. You then need to exit the secret secret room, go right again, which leads you back to the main path that goes to the boss room, then turn around, which removes the lava flow, allowing you to proceed back up to the area after the mini-boss, go back up the vertical lava room a second time, and find the hidden door you unlock that leads to a room with freaking spikes. You need to carefully swim around, but do it quickly because it damages you in the end as a sub-tank. And for the love of Christ, don't get a game over during this. And if you think that's bad, the Area I sub-tank is even worse! It isn't as hard, but it requires you to go accept a mission to go through Area I and break nearly every box looking for a specific item, which you then need to bring all the way back to the person that gave you the mission 6 times in a row. Holy freaking shit, Inti. What the hell? And on the subject of missions, I'm sorry, but was it possible to make what should be a simple system so cramped and rigid? Instead of simply picking a level and traversing to that stage, you pick and accept a mission and travel to its destination manually. Aside from the main story missions, you can also get optional quests that often bring rewards in the name of upgrade chips or e-crystals. You access and accept missions via transservers, but can only have one mission active at a time for whatever reason. You also cannot proceed through a level and fight the boss without its mission active. Combine this with the confusing map and level locations, and the need to go to a transserver to even start a mission, and you get a big pile of chaotic overcomplexity. And once you complete a mission, you need to go back to a transserver and report it, all the while an ear-grating beeping sound violating your auditory orifices. Once again though, Advent fixed this. Are you noticing a trend here? Mega Man ZX was clearly a great idea, but I feel like the ideas outcrowded the execution and led to a lot of design issues I stated above. I can commend Inticreates for fixing almost all of these with the sequel, but that doesn't mean I will ignore them here. But even with all this, ZX is still a very fun game. It's confusing a lot of the time, and has some missions and stages that are downright evil, but nevertheless, the experience of ZX is still a positive one, and the game is definitely a good addition to Inticreates' catalog. The early game suffers the greatest, as that is when you scramble the most to find each new area, but once you're accustomed to the world and have access to every biometal, the quality of the game improves dramatically. This caps off in what may be the coolest bonus content ever in any game. A completely optional area near endgame where you can not only face off against 4 each of the Mega Man 0, 3, and 4 bosses if you insert those games into the Game Boy Advance slot, but also a secret boss fight against Omega Zero. No joke, this is easily the hardest boss fight of the game and of any of Inti's Mega Man games up until now. Omega has been training in the hundreds of years since his defeat and is much faster and more aggressive. And if you haven't picked up any life ups, then a Shungoku Satsu style attack is always a one-hit kill. And if that weren't enough, his Tenshowa Barrier move now heals him. But if you manage to defeat Omega or take out all 8 of the bonus Zero series bosses, you can get this mysterious rock that once you have cleared the game, allows you to access a bonus biometal form, ModelOX, or perhaps more accurately, ModelOmega. This is perhaps the closest thing to obtaining God mode in any Mega Man game without cheating. ModelOX plays identically to ZX on the surface, but it has infinite overdrive. Infinite overdrive that also unlocks a plethora of new moves, EX skills, rapid fire charged buster shots, and the return of the Rakoha Giga attack, all of which can make a mincemeat of any boss in the game. It's undoubtedly the coolest thing to appear in any Mega Man game, but I kind of think this is evident of the forgotten potential of the game. Why isn't every biometal like this? And no, I don't mean why isn't every biometal as broken as OX, but why doesn't each one have a moveset comparable to ModelOX? Oh well, I suppose I shouldn't complain about something so this awesome. There is one final bonus form you can also unlock in the game. After beating both Vent and Ale's story, you are allowed to keep Model X in addition to ZX after your fight with Jiro. And Model X is actually better in a lot of ways thanks to its stackable charge shots. Ironically, Model X is perhaps the best form to fight Omega with, since keeping your distance with charge attacks is your best strategy. Now all those times Jiro said X was the superior hunter makes sense. In the end, Mega Man ZX is a good game. Not great, but good. It also got good reviews, but not great ones, with many praising the level design and visuals, but finding the world map confusing and the gameplay somewhat unoriginal aside from the biometal system. And yet again, seemingly like clockwork, Inti would make a sequel for next year. Mega Man ZX Advent, which I will go over next episode. If you like this, please leave a rating and a comment, and if you'd like to support my work, I now have a Patreon which you can donate to. Thank you very much for watching. This has been ModelOmega, and have an awesome day.
我はメシアなり
おい